I don't know. I've seen other people do it. I just wanted to say that. So, what's up, chat room? Well, when the chat room arrives. Um, Yesterday I did a live stream and I was supposed to have my wife as a guest, but she was actually busy. So she came in as a moderator. So that's cool. Um, the only problem with that was because I had it set up for going live with another person, it took out some of my community moderation tools. So this time I'm not going live with anyone. So now I can take advantage of my community moderation tools, which is excellent. So let's get to it. I forgot to drop the title of this live stream, but if people hate, I'm playing with my new little fidget spinner. Yes, I know I'm late to the party. This was a trend from 11 years ago, but yeah, I just got it. Batman, fidget spinner, of course. So I'm a bat junkie. But this being late, I'm not gonna try to get into too many heady topics. Um, we'll see if how the chat room be reacts. To see whether I have to utilize the community moderation tools, but I do feel more at ease knowing that those tools are available to me now, that I can stop some of the streamer stalkers. Well, there's only one streamer stalker, but I'm assuming he won't be back anyway because he's had numerous reports against him, and I think YouTube did follow up on it. If they haven't, or if it wasn't able to stop him, then I do have my community moderation tools, which is great. But again, sorry I did not throw a title into the stream before starting it. Um, I'm just gonna say it's gonna be about looking at future philosophy topics for this week. This being Sunday now. Monday will be talk about Monday. I'm gonna talk about Martin Luther King because it's Martin Luther King Day. So I'm gonna talk about that Monday. But for the following for the rest of the week, I like to jump into my favorite topic, which I should think will keep me from being uh, demonetized. Philosophy. I've never had a yeah, as far as I can remember, I don't think I've ever had a live stream demonetized talking about philosophy nor science, only about politics. And even in the only time it was demonetized was talking about geopolitics. So, um, so in a particular country, not to be spoken of. So we'll be avoiding talking about that country. Well, I actually do plan on talking about that country, but in a positive way to kind of get some good juju going since I've talked about it in some critical aspects, and I don't want that to be the only thing said because if people from that country have seen it, it might look bad upon me as I plan on visiting the place possibly this year, very possibly this year. um, but again, aside from that, I want to get into like some philosophy topics for one, I want to get into the one where I think I created the stalker. I don't know if it's the same person. It could be two different wackos, but one particular wacko came from a philosophy live stream I did several months ago talking about whether morality is relative or not. And you guys can check that out. Um, just go into my subcategories, and I have like nerdy stuff. Under nerdy stuff, you'll see my live streams talking about psychology, philosophy, comic books, superheroes, all that good stuff. But particularly under philosophy, you'll see a specific title about morality, and so I gave my views on that, and I don't claim that my views are the best or that they're even correct, just that they have been thought out. I have, given them thought, and the guy disagreed with me, and I tried to explain for an hour my case to him, and I explained it to him in good faith, not knowing he was just a fucking troll and a moron on to boot. But I tried to explain my view, and then he just came in and just started personally attacking me, so I blocked him. So because you can't permanently block people, he just came back on the different usernames, trying to troll and switch the subject up. And I was like, dude, I already gave you over an hour of my time trying to explain something that you just failed to grasp because you just don't have the cognitive ability. That's not my fault. Like if someone actually, takes time to lecture you as if you were his student for like an hour and you still don't grasp it, that's kind of your issue, not mine. And he came back in several streams just under different usernames, just trolling on subjects that had nothing to do with morality. Like we're sitting there talking about Deadpool and Wolverine. He wants to keep talking about morality, or we're talking about traveling somewhere. He's still trying to bring up the same subject. So he switched from that to trying to like, use my identity and just being a pain, just showing up ad nauseum in my streams. He even went about using a VP, and this is where I don't know if he's the same person or not, or if it's a different person. But I assumed it was the same person because he was saying I owe him an apology. I was like, no, I don't. You were the one personally attacking me, so you know I banned you, and so I don't owe anyone an apology because I never lash out at anyone, especially not a person who's viewing this broadcast, um, unless they said something out of pocket. So um, I had nothing to apologize for. So this dude wants an apology, so he kept trying to flood my chat room uh, with different variants of himself under different usernames using a VPN and multiple devices. But again, that doesn't work because YouTube's parent company is Google, so they have the tools to find someone. So if a content creator is being harassed and they report it, and they report multiple instances of the same person, whether they're using different usernames or devices, YouTube will be able to figure that out because again, their parent company is Google. It's the most I mean, aside from them being one of the most powerful tech companies in the world, they also have the most powerful search engine and algorithm that they utilize. Like, it was going to find this person. So, I do believe they have halted his ability to stalk my streams. But again, if they haven't, I am now aware of the community moderation tools I can use to filter out undesirables. So that's great. um, but I like to take comments or questions from the chat room once people arrive. I see people coming in and out of the chat room. If no one arrives, that's cool. It's Saturday night, at least here where I am. I'll go about my business. Mm, but um, definitely would like, some feedback, of course. But again, the topic here is, what would you guys like me to talk about this week as pertaining to philosophy? Like I said, one of the things I am going to touch upon again is morality and ethics. Not exactly the same thing, but maybe I can distinguish that in that string coming this week. But I want to touch upon that subject that hit a nerve with that one person, who is more than likely mentally ill, because the fact that he was stalking my channel for so long, when there's literally thousands, if not millions, it might be millions, but literally thousands of different YouTube channels available, tens of thousands of YouTube channels. And like I said, it's possibly millions of YouTube channels, but I'm going to touch back on that subject. And if he's still here, he might crop back up for that string. Um, we'll see. But I want to touch back upon that subject again, because there's some other aspects of it that I didn't bring up last time that I would like to bring up this time. But you know, if people have some suggestions, that would be great. Like I should, I should break down sort of like the main disciplines within philosophy, at least within Western analytic philosophy, which is the type of philosophy in which I do. I don't do continental philosophy. So I should kind of break that down. And then from there, people can tell me what they might be interested in me discussing. So, you know, generally, so you have philosophy as a huge umbrella term for basically any sort of discipline that um, investigates um, the world through sort of some sort of conceptual means, right? Um, and you have the one of the schisms is between Western philosophy and Eastern philosophy. Western philosophy is more based in is more is Western philosophy for the most part is secular, okay, whereas Eastern philosophy is more aligned with religion. There's been a sharp divide in Western philosophy between religion and philosophy, which is actually what started philosophy in the ancient in amongst the ancients, was their ability to try to um, investigate nature divorced from any sort of like supernatural or religious um, content. With the That comes with the old Ionian thinkers, who are probably the first batch of ancient philosophers, at least in the Western world. These would have been the first philosophers, the Ionian philosophers, who are pre-Socratics. Um, Whereas in the Eastern world, again, it's more aligned with religion. Like there's not really a sharp divide between religion and philosophy in the Eastern world, as pertains to say like Buddhism, Taoism, Confucianism, and Hinduism. Like they're both philosophies and religion. The difference is that as religion became organized in the West, it became less philosophical because it became more dogmatic. Or as one of my late professors who passed away a few years ago, Jack Odell, said, he referred to Western religion as frozen metaphysics, what which once a fluid way of thinking about the world became crystallized and or dogmatic under the disciples of those philosophies. Whereas in Eastern philosophy or Eastern religion, whichever, it's more fluid. So the philosophy and religion are still more fluid, and usually in those religions, there's there's not usually a big godhead at the center of it, as it is in Western religion. So that would be the big schism first in philosophies between Western and Eastern, Western being secular, Eastern being religious. Then there's another schism in Western philosophy between analytic philosophy and continental philosophy. Continental philosophy is more reliant on, literary criticism and and social justice, where where Western, well, sorry, where analytic philosophy is more dependent on um, mathematical logic and the empirical sciences. Now, that's a little bit of a generalization because there are people in continental philosophy that also put huge emphasis on utilizing the tools of logic, and there's also people in the analytic side who are also um, people who are social critics or delve a lot into literature as well. So it's a little, but for the most part, that's just a that's just a good general thumb. So, and like I said, I veer on the analytic side. Most professional philosophers in in English speaking anglophone countries tend to come out of the analytic tradition. And the analytic tradition started in the late 1800s from the German mathematician and logician Gottlob Frege. What's up, Howard? What's going on, bro? Um, so so analytic philosophy started by the founder Gottlob Frege, who was a German mathematician and logician. He founded modern symbolic. He founded modern symbolic logic and worked on the very foundations of mathematics itself, where he tried to reduce all of mathematics uh, to propositional logic, or to predicate logic. Because he again he created first order predicate logic. So he tried to reduce all of mathematics to basically to the principles of first order logic. And then his research in doing so, he became the founder of analytic philosophy. So I can't say who's the founder of Eastern. Well, I can't say who is the founder of continental philosophy, but most people, when they think of continental philosophy, might think of people like Schopenhauer, Nietzsche, um, and a bunch of other folks there. A lot of the existentialist philosophers and German idealists. Anyway, this those disciplines under analytic philosophy, which, like I said, so coming this week, I'm gonna discuss different philosophy topics. I'm gonna give you the disciplines within analytic philosophy, and then you guys can ask me, hey, why don't you talk about this, or you can talk about that this week. I'm like, all right, cool. So, under analytic philosophy, obviously you have symbolic logic, symbolic or mathematical logic. Okay, you can ask me about that. Not that great in logic, but better than the average bear. um, so there's symbolic logic we could talk about. There's epistemology, which is really big. Epistemology is like, hey, what's up, baby? Mrs. Contrarian is here, guys. Mahal, were you here yesterday? Were you still here, or did you leave the stream when I was saying the idea we could use for that other channel is that we can make it a him and her channel, like it'll be something we both utilize. But it would basically be your channel, but um, it could be something where we're both on it, and then you could put all your travel stuff on there as well. I was thinking that might be a good idea because I was thinking of the channel Mrs. Eats, you know that little the Japanese YouTuber I like to follow. You do have access to the channel, right? Like without you don't need me to log into it, right? Because let's say if not, you could just start uploading travel stuff on there, right? And we can do when we do live streams together, we could do it on there. Oh, you haven't tried accessing? I thought you did like last year. Well, when you get a chance, maybe tomorrow or whenever, maybe you can try to access it. Because originally I was going to use it as my martial arts channel, but until I'm like get back into training, there's really no point in utilizing it as a martial arts channel. I'm thinking you could just use it for whatever you want to put on there. I don't know. You can put anything on there. Like if you want to talk about your travel stuff, so you got something big coming up, right? We're not gonna talk about that till after you've done it. But if you want to upload your travel stuff or any other stuff, all the stuff you do, it would quickly get monetized. Like seriously, like I'm pretty sure your channel could blossom in like 3 months what it took me 2 years to do here. So, um, but yeah, if you can access it, like I said, just um, all the stuff because all the stuff you put on Facebook or Instagram, why not put that stuff up and monetize it? You know what the Joker said: if you're good at something, never do it for free. So why not start uploading all that stuff and then getting it monetized? Even the older stuff that I've already put on here, like people who go there wouldn't have already seen it. So even the stuff from a few years back, you can upload all that old stuff from 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 years back, even further because you've been traveling for so long. Like you could upload all that sort of stuff, and if you want, you can like kind of edit it or remix it. But anyway, so I was telling people like ideas for me doing streams this week. I was thinking I would just concentrate on doing philosophy again, since all that geopolitics I've been talking for the past 3, 4 weeks has gotten demonetized. Like the paranormal stuff did really well. None of that stuff got demonetized. But once I started talking geopolitics, that stuff got quickly demonetized, especially because of that one particular country. That that likes the color red. So anyway, so guys, I was saying I want to do like philosophy topics all this week, and I said I'm probably gonna touch on morality again, the topic where I got a stalker from. Um, but here are like I said, here are the different disciplines within analytic and Western philosophy in general that we can talk about. Because most of these topics are both on the analytic and continental philosophy. It's just the way they the way they talk about them is different. Where the way they analyze them is different. Whereas in more of an analytic philosophy tradition, the way it's analyzed is through like usually like some sort of conceptual or linguistic analysis. Whereas in the continental tradition, they might look at it from the point of like his, a historical perspective, as well as like a perspective looking at it through different ideas and different classic literature. Excuse me. What's up, Lyman? What's going on, bro? So again, so here's the breakdown of the different disciplines in philosophy, and from that, you guys can tell me you want me to discuss any of those things in the coming this coming week. Okay. So like I said, the first thing obviously is symbolic logic. Um, be surprised how many people don't understand symbolic logic. Like, and the, the another funny thing about symbolic logic is it's sort of the weed out class for people and who are philosophy majors. Oh, Lyman says, "What's tonight's topic, guys?" So tonight's topic is just me discussing ideas for philosophy discussions this week. People can ask me philosophy questions today too, but today is just like get an idea of what sort of topics people might want me to address to address this week pertaining to philosophy. So that's what I was. So I was just about to break down the different aspects of philosophy so that people actually know, where their questions might fall under. How it says the great philosophers all bring it back to human nature and natural rights within their societies they like it to be. So yeah, that's more of a continental tradition, which I was discussing earlier, not as much of an analytic tradition. But we can go over the history of the different great philosophers, or actually we can discuss whom people consider to be the great philosophers. Ms. Contrarian says I have to step out for a bit to have lunch. Oh, okay, that's fine. Christian says hi. What's up? So again, the first one is symbolic logic, and like I said, when you are a philosophy major, you actually find out that symbolic logic is a weed out class for a lot of mediocre students because let's be honest, a lot of mediocre college students gravitate to the liberal arts because they are either math phobic or they have less ability for how I put it. They're not they don't do well in math and science, so a lot of them gravitate to the liberal arts, and so some of them would be like, well, will want to take philosophy, and then they quickly realize their philosophy isn't what they think it is. Like they take a philosophy 101 class and think, oh, this is gonna be easy. We're just gonna be talking about stuff like what's the sound of one hand clapping them, and if a tree falls in the woods and no one's there around, can anybody hear it? They're thinking they're gonna talk about stupid stuff like that, and it's they quickly find out it's nothing like that. They're like, what the hell, man? Even worse is when they find out you have to do symbolic logic, and to do symbolic logic in philosophy, you have to have at least a college level. You have to have fulfilled a college level mathematical requisite. So if you can do college algebra, you can do logic. But if you can't do college level algebra, you're not going to be able to do symbolic logic. It's just because symbolic logic is math is an aspect of uh, is a formal science. um, and to be able to do mathematical logic, you have to be able to do college level algebra. So that tends to be a weed out class for some people who considered philosophy. They're like, damn, I'm a liberal arts. I didn't think I had to do math. Like, yeah, you do. Actually, same thing with linguistics. Like, some people get into linguistics, confusing it with literature, and they think, oh, I'm just going to take linguistics so I can learn languages. Then they major in linguistics and find out that linguistics isn't the study of languages, it's the study of the organization of languages, which means you have to learn the different aspects of linguistics, which is syntax, semantics, phonology, morphology, um, uh, philosophy of language, um, and psycholinguistics, things of that nature. Um, And they're like, "Oh shit," because when they start doing syntax, they realize, "Oh shit, syntax is kind of like logic." And they're like, "Wait, I, I don't want to like." People in linguistics are like, "Shit, I didn't know syntax was gonna be just was gonna be like doing logic." And like, yeah, some when you learn syntax and linguistics, you have to know logic. So I had no problem with syntax really. It was plus it was fun actually, but whatever. Howard says I like Locke. Okay, I mean Locke is definitely a good one. I mean he's not one of my favorite philosophers, but I like him because he's one of the he he's like one of the founders of British empiricism. So I wouldn't mind discussing Locke this if people want to do go over to him this week. I could talk about him and like all the British empiricists in general. Locke, John Locke, Jeremy Bentham, John Stuart Mill, um, David Hume, Adam Smith, um, George George Berkeley. And it's funny, Berkeley, California is named after George Berkeley, but they pronounce his name incorrectly because you know I think he George Berkeley was Scottish, so he is pronounced there Berkeley, but they call it Berkeley after the you know just like David Hume, his name his last name was originally spelled Home like home, but in Scottish it's Hume, so he actually changed the spelling of his last name to Hume so that people would pronounce it the way it's spelled because British British people, uh, particularly English people, kept calling pronouncing his name uh, home instead of Hume, so he changed the O to a U. Anyway, so yeah, I wouldn't mind talking about the British empiricists if people want to do that. um, how British empiricism sort of set the foundation for the European Enlightenment. How I said Spooner is more recent, and I think is the granddad of libertarians. I'm not familiar with that. Again, that's probably more continental philosophy because they are more heavily involved in like being social critics and political movements, whereas people on the analytic side tend to be more ba- they not that some of them are social critics as well, but a lot of them tend to want to just be more academic than get involved in like social movements, which is I think one of the big differences between the analytic folks and the continental folks. But again, it's an overgeneralization. Uh, Howard says Barkley is very Western. I'm good with that. Yeah. Sorry. So let me go over the headings again. I mean the different disciplines for Western philosophy that we can discuss, and then we can discuss something particular within that topic. So symbolic logic, epistemology. Epistemology is like the study of knowledge, beliefs, and rationality from a normative perspective. Although there's what we call naturalized epistemology, which is like the descriptive investigation of knowledge, belief, and rationality, which kind of led into the creation of cognitive science. Um, Cognitive science was sort of like a taking elements of uh, experimental psychology, um, epistemology, and biopsychology, and they all coming together to make this new science back in the 60s. Um, so there's epistemology. Then there's metaphysics, a huge one, of course. I, the funny thing is, when I discussed that last time, people only were interested in the paranormal aspects of metaphysics. And yes, the, the paranormal is an aspect of metaphysics, but when we're talking about metaphysics as an as an academic discipline, we're not really talking about the paranormal stuff so much as talking about just more of a conceptual way of studying nature, um, and that can be like stuff like the nature of time, the nature of space, um, what things exist, stuff like that. Really broad, vague topics that when people think philosophy, they think these sorts of metaphysical topics. So metaphysics is a huge one. Obviously, ethics would be big. Ethics and morality, um, and you have both ethics as a normative study of how we ought to behave, how we ought to think and all that sort of stuff. Then you have more. Then you have the descriptive ethics and moral psychology, which talks about how we actually morally behave apart from how we ought to. And that was sort of the thing I had went into many months ago that gained me my troll, my stalker, because he didn't understand how I could talk about the reality of the relativity of morality and objective morality, and he misunderstood what I was trying to say because it was a very nuanced position I was trying to give, which is why I'm going to go over this again in a stream this week. I was trying to tell him that for the most part, people are right that morality is relative because there's not really anything objective you can look at, in the world and say that's moral or that's immoral. But because we all have certain moral instincts, which are innate to all of us, this fact about moral psychology gives us some sort of objectivity to it. And obviously, if we're going to discuss certain human tragedies, there has to be something objective on which to stand to say this is wrong. There has to be something out there objective to say, you know, slavery is wrong or genocide is wrong or, murder is wrong or SA is wrong. This sort of stuff. So he failed to grasp that, and he has stalked my streams ever since. Um, so again, that will be a big one. Pause. There's also an aspect of philosophy. This is which is very interesting, but people are less knowledgeable about when they think of philosophy, which is the philosophy of art and aesthetics. Um, Now, people who may study stuff like art history or art criticism, may be more aware of the philosophy of art and aesthetics. But it's an interesting topic in its own. Not just art; it deals with also literature and music because they all fall under aesthetics. So that's an aspect of philosophy we can discuss. That's also value theory. Value theory is closely related to like ethics, um, and both like value theory, ethics, and the philosophy of art and aesthetics are all what we call soft philosophy, as opposed to hard philosophy. Hard philosophy is logic, epistemic, uh, logic, epistemology, metaphysics. That's like hard philosophy. So we can talk about value theory. Value theory talks about, you know, talks gets into discussions of whether values are relative, are uh, certain cultural values better than others, value skepticism, stuff like that. And it touches on similar topics to ethics, but it is its own discussion. And obviously, there's also the history of philosophy, which is a separate topic as well, um, where you can date different philosophical movements and different people within philosophy. Like you can start with like ancient philosophy, medieval philosophy, modern philosophy. Hint: modern philosophy isn't now. That started actually in the late 1500s, early 1600s. um, and contemporary philosophy, which is now, as well as talking about different movements like logical positivism, um, postmodernism, uh, social constructivism, um, different regional variants of philosophy like Afro Caribbean philosophy, um, East Asian philosophy, um, um, the Indo Indo Hindu philosophy, Middle Eastern, all that sort of stuff. So that would fit into like history of philosophy and stuff like that. And then I guess like the final one might be not the final one. Then another one is philosophy of language. Philosophy of language crosses philosophy of language has some crossover with with epistemology and with metaphysics because a lot of people wrote off metaphysics and said we should just be talking about the philosophy of language itself, how these philosophical problems are just a matter of language. So philosophy of language is a big one, and then philosophy of science. I would say philosophy of mathematics too, but I think philosophy of mathematics falls under philosophy of science and logic. Generally, every academic intellectual discipline there's a corresponding philosophy study to it. And I'm not joking. Like you can have like the philosophy of video games, right? So, but yeah, those are the major ones, guys. So logic, epistemology, metaphysics, ethics, philosophy of art and aesthetics, value theory, history of history of philosophy, philosophy of language, and philosophy of science. Howard says I prefer looking into societal philosophy and don't nug down into levels you speak of. Well, yeah, but what you're talking about is an analytic philosophy. Like most professional philosophers don't talk about philosophy as political movements. That's continental philosophy. A lot of to be blunt, a lot of people in analytic philosophy don't take continental thinkers seriously. They think they lack the they think they lack the intellectual rigor of people in the analytic tradition because people from my tradition have to be well versed in logic, conceptual analysis, and like some element of scientific thinking. So, well, scientific reasoning. So, like basically logic, conceptual analysis, and an appreciation for philosophy being continuous with the sciences in some sense. Continental philosophers like to talk about political movements and stuff like that. A lot of us think that a lot of that is wrong headed, and I kind of agree because it's often because it often comes out as people who are like academics, and Thomas Sowell talks about this all the time. A lot of people who are academics are better known for like getting involved in political movements than actual like academic research. Like so, people like Noam Chomsky, like he has multiple lives. Like there's the academic side of him where people know him more as like the founder of Mount. He's sort of like the Einstein of linguistics, and he's basically one of the founding fathers of cognitive science. He, along with people like Jerry Fodor and a few others, where they rebelled against behavioral psychology, but they were also trained in analytic philosophy. So he's one of those heavy hitters. But then on the other side, people know him as a political critic of American politics and stuff like that. And like I said, there's more people like that on the continental side that want to talk about philosophy as a matter of political struggle, and that's really not I don't want to say it's not philosophy, but it's not, at least in at least in many tradition uh, analytic type schools, that's not considered academic philosophy. I should say. How it says best advice I got was to do unto others as they do unto you. I thought that was good too until I read some books by Herman Hesse. If you haven't read Herman Hesse, I highly recommend him. He wrote the book Siddhartha, which is a really good book, and he wrote another book that was similar in nature to that called the I think it's called The Reluctant Messiah, both by Herman Hesse. Um, and one of the things he was saying is people think the so-called Christian golden rule, do unto others as you would have them do unto you, is a good way to live by. But anyone who's taken ethics knows that's not a good thing because some people might be cool having things done unto them that they should not be doing to other people. For instance, if you're a sadomasochist, if you're a sadomasochist, you are very comfortable with things being done to you that you should not be doing unto other people, like the Joker. Also, I mean, you may be mentally unfit to be able to know what others might like and not like done to them. So that's not actually a good. uh, I get why. I get the. So I get the I get the meaning behind the so-called golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. But it doesn't work in the real world because so many people have some because all of us have different motivations and different tolerances for how they want to be treated. So the golden rule doesn't really work. Um, might be better stated: do unto others as they will want done unto them, because like I said, you can't extrapolate what you want done to you will be something what others will want done to them. So that doesn't really work. And like I said, I think anyone who takes like a morality 101 class, like a contemporary moral issues class, or an ethics 101 class, will quickly discover that that's not a very good moral principle, for the fact that we all differ in our different motivations and ways we like to be treated, and we can't extrapolate that to other people. I think that actually causes more problems in the real world than it solves. Fish DR says just thinking of something changes its perceived and natural definition of makeup. Don't think too much, you might change the world. Um, I'm not even sure what that means. I don't even know what that means, bro. Patty says, hello, sir. My name is uh, Gupta Fran Indian. If your name is Gupta, why is your username Patty Smith? That's a bit confusing. How it says it only works for a good-hearted person. Well, again, that's not that. Then it doesn't work because you can't assume that every person is good-hearted. In fact, you shouldn't assume that. You should assume that every person has their own motivations and biases, just like you have your own motivations and biases, which doesn't necessarily make a person bad, but it doesn't necessarily make them good either. I think seeing people as good versus evil is a very simplified worldview that doesn't work in the real world when you're talking about the complexity of human behavior. Um, and like I said, even with good-hearted people, it still doesn't work because again, people have different motives and biases. Even good, good-natured people. A perfect example of that is a good TV show that used to be on. Um, the what's it called? It's called The Good Place. And like the people who did that series obviously did a lot of work in moral philosophy for that TV show. It was on Netflix. I think it's still on Netflix, but it used to be a show on NBC. But The Good Place delves into a lot of moral philosophy, and it shows how even a person trying to do the right thing can end up in the most disastrous of consequences, which is one of the reasons why consequentialist ethics doesn't work. But just something we can get into when I do this live stream about ethics, the different pitfalls of different meta ethical theories like consequentialism, utilitarianism, um, and and other um, ethical theories. He said bias can be cultural. That's the complexity. Well, we all have biases. I mean, that's just it's not cultural. It's biological. Like the human nature itself. We all have both perceptual and cognitive biases. Not to mention certain emotional biases and limits in our cognitive ability and reasoning and stuff like that. So, and then that's just talking about normal, um, and that's just talking about people who have normal mental health. You bring in abnormal, you bring in abnormal behavior, and that complicates it even more. But we all have biases, both perceptual and cognitive, which are sometimes called the hidden persuaders to human behavior. They call it hidden persuaders. These um, perceptual, cognitive, and emotional biases. But again, um, I don't think a good rule of thumb for ethical behavior is treat others as you would have them as you would want them to treat you, because you maybe want to be treated in a way that's completely different than the next person. It it it, it, it's a little bit egocentric to assume that people want to be treated the way you want to be treated. It's not saying you per se, um, Howard, but I'm saying in general, to assume that people want to be treated the way you want to be treated would be kind of egocentric, because they could be it can be a matter of different cultural differences, like say you're Christian but your next door neighbors are Hindu. So yeah, it could be some cultural differences there, but also just they could they could be same, like you both could be like conservative white Christians, or whatever, um but still have completely different outlooks on life and how you'd like to be treated. So you can't really assume they want to be treated the way you do. But like I said, the better, I don't think there is a golden rule to morality, but I think a better variant of the golden rule would be do unto others as they will want have done unto them. That might be the better version of that golden rule. Although I still don't, although I can pick that apart too and show why that may not work either. So it's behavior is complicated. I mean, if if ethics was simpler, we would have had this solved a long time ago. All of ethics would have just been bound up and turned into moral psychology. That was another issue I brought up in several of my older live streams when I talked about how progress in philosophy is often gone unseen, because the issue is when there is significant amount of progress made in philosophy, it's no longer considered philosophy but becomes science. So the latest, like I said, so the latest discipline to branch off and become science has been cognitive science, and it still has a lot of elements of philosophy in it because a lot of there are still cognitive scientists who are philosophers of mind, but they also work with people who are neurobiologists, linguists, zoologists, um, cognitive psychologists, and anthropologists. They all work together to for this to bring together cognitive science. But it's only because of the work done in philosophy in the past 70 years that we have this new science. And psychology is still sort of a part of that. Psychology is still a young science. I would say it's like the adolescent. It might be the adolescent science right now, whereas cognitive science is his little brother. And there was I remember when I was still in college, there was actually this thought about, I'm gonna say about 25 years ago, that all of cognitive neuroscience would subsume psychology, so psychology would just be subsumed under cognitive neuroscience, but that hasn't happened. And likely, even if you even if we have a more advanced cognitive neuroscience, I don't think it's going to completely subsume psychology, no more than neuroscience has you know no more than neuroscience has supplanted all of like neurobiology or whatever. Like they're going to be inter like they're just going to continue to be interrelated fields. So because there's more aspects of because psychology is a broader discipline than cognitive neuroscience. Cognitive neuroscience is a more narrow scope of investigation. So I don't think that cognitive neuroscience will ever likely replace all aspects of psychology, except in the aspects of cognitive psychology. Most cognitive psychologists are also considered cognitive neuroscientists. So, how it says human nature and how to work in a society is very complex and boundless on how to go about it. Um, yeah, but like I said, that's really not philosophy. That tends to be more getting into aspects of sociology and yeah, I would say yes, sociology stuff like that, history. That's not so much philosophy per se. Yeah, I mean, it touches on some aspects of philosophy, of course, because literally philosophy touches on every intellectual discipline there is. Like, there's a philosophy of humor, philosophy of cooking. Like, it touches on everything. But but just like saying something like human nature and how to work in society, that definitely sounds like something you would talk about in like a sociology class, perhaps, or something related to history, something like that. Um, maybe socioeconomics. So sociology and philosophy are closely tied together. Not really. Nah. The only thing that tethers them together is again the fact that the social sciences branched out of philosophy, but all the sciences branched out of philosophy. Both the social sciences and the natural sciences all branched out of philosophy. Like Aristotle was actually the first one to uh, to sort of like name all the different academic disciplines, which at that time would have been considered philosophy or natural philosophy. But he was the first one to kind of individuate all the different aspects of natural philosophy. When he talked about physics, then metaphysics, then he broke down falls aspects of science into biology, astronomy, chemistry, social science, history, that sort of stuff. But sociology and philosophy aren't closely tied together. Again, that's the continental philosophy tradition. That's not analytic philosophy. Analytic philosophy is more analytic philosophy is more closely tied to empirical science and logic. Um, it's really not their it's really not the role of analytic philosophy to do social critiques. Like I said, it's the whole sort of aspect of doing social critiques, like social constructivism and postmodernism and deconstructivism, and those are the sorts of things that usually falls within the continental tradition. The continental tradition was usually like a bunch of French and German thinkers, and again, a lot of them are criticized for not being having a lot of um, logical rigor in their in their research. It seems like they're more interested in pushing a certain political narrative through their arguments than actually like getting to like um, a conceptual analysis. And usually when you talk about conceptual analysis, you're talking about trying to get at what is the essence of a thing, or what is it, what what make what makes something by the very nature of it, what constitutes something being X by the very nature of that thing. So, and that's in the heart of analytical philosophy, is getting at the essences of things, by looking at conceptual analysis and stuff like that. So there's a lot of essentialism built into analytic philosophy, which is what separates it from the empirical sciences. The empirical sciences try to get away from essentialism in a sense. But in continental philosophy, like I said, there's often a reliance on doing social critiques and looking at things from a historical perspective, which is can be useful, but um, it doesn't it, it it can give you more insight into something, but it doesn't really, it's not really, there's no progress in that. It can give you insight into certain ways of looking at how people think and behave, but that insight doesn't really give us any progress. Where again, like I said, under the analytic tradition, a lot of the work that they do, when there's a considerable body of knowledge in analytic philosophy, it becomes science. So, and I think that's the difference. And like I said, that's why progress in philosophy is often hidden, because people don't see that once a significant body of knowledge is gained in philosophy, it becomes science. Or also sometimes a lot of the answers we work out in philosophy tend to be like pretty nuanced and sometimes negative. So when we discover an answer to something, it's usually the answer is the thing isn't there. So if that makes sense. Random aviation cases. What are we talking about? So I'm just talking about for this week. I want to delve into philosophy topics, and I'm just kind of like shooting the breeze with different topics of philosophy we can head into this week. Uzumaki says, "What's happening? Hope all is well. What's up, man?" Uh, how it says most people settle into a comfort zone, like they, that they like or pursue to get there. Yeah, but again, that's not really philosophy per se. I think, like I said, that's more talking on aspects of social science and stuff like that. So like a traditional analysis of something might be like, what is a moment? And I've had a one of the professors actually like break down an analysis of a moment in time. I probably have that paper somewhere here in one of my folders of all my old articles. Some of I've which I've read, and some which I was a bad student and haven't read yet from 20 years ago. I still have these things I need to read. Um, I'm not sure if I have it or not. I probably do. But he breaks down the analysis of a moment. Um, and the funny thing is, it was by a professor who was give an example from another professor at this at the school, showing how he was being a good little analytic philosopher. he was he was I won't say he was mocking him, but he was saying this is an example of more of a traditional analysis that he wasn't so much into. Um, but we don't really discuss like the like specific like social topics. Like we can get into sorts of topics as well, but that won't be under like my philosophy discussion. It'll be like under something else. But like if if we decide to discuss certain social topics, I don't have a problem with it. But it won't. I won't call it philosophy though. I'll just call it whatever that particular day topic is for that day. Like um talking about, I don't know, social whatever. It sounds like sort of the stuff they would discuss on Wisecrack if people watch that YouTube channel. I stopped watching it a year or two ago because after the after Jared Bauer left, the founder of Wisecrack left and sold it. Um, the person who came on to narrate to host and narrate the videos in that channel, he just seems very he he's steeped in philosophy, but he himself is from the continental tradition. So, and everything he talks about just seems to be capitalism bad, socialism good. So um, it it becomes a one. It sort of became a one note thing. So I stopped watching it, and it was funny that a channel that's now corporate owned talks about anti-capitalism all the time. There's a bit of irony in that. Howard says you're right. It's social science, but cultural values will guide them. Philosophy guides social patterns. Yeah, but you misunderstand. I think you have sort of a misunderstanding of the type of philosophy of which my background is. Like I said, analytic. Like that's like I was trying to say. Like I come from the analytic tradition of philosophy, where our emphasis is on logic, uh, logic, um, clear language, and an appreciation of science. Someone from a more continental tradition might be more motivated to talk about philosophy, how it guides social patterns. That's not really my that's not really my shtick. um, like I said, when I talk about philosophy, I'm talking about more philosophy, qua philosophy type stuff like time, nature, the mind, what's moral, um, different particular philosophers and philosophical movements like the logical positivists, the existentialists, um, stuff like that. Um, empiricism versus um, what was it? Oh, empiricism versus what rationalism. stuff like that. Problems, problems of the mind, stuff like that. Whereas getting social patterns stuff is more continental philosophy. I don't really get into that stuff. Now I can get into stuff from like a psychological perspective because that was the other one of the other things I majored in was psychology. But the funny thing is they're not really related because, like I said, most psychologists have no training in psychology in philosophy whatsoever. Like I remember another guy I knew as an undergrad. We both took philosophy, but we were also in the psychology department as well, and we brought up like a really important philosopher who often talked about philosophical psychology. And my professors had no idea who we were talking about. They had no idea who Ludwig Wittgenstein is. And it's like, yeah. And then even on the philosophy side, when they invited people from psychology and neuroscience and cognitive science to speak on certain subjects to us, he warned us. He said, these people don't have a background in philosophy. So he said, they might approach these topics differently than we would. Um, and so, we all understood that. But most people in social sciences aren't trained in philosophy. People in psychology, sociology, economics, criminology, history aren't really trained in it. But there are some philosophers who are trained in the sciences because usually these people specialize in philosophy of science and they might go off to get a master's in a certain scientific discipline along with their PhD in philosophy. And so they become philosophers of science in a particular scientific field like physics, biology, chemistry, psychology, mathematics, whatever. So they don't really overlap. He said, "Yeah, that's too bad." Yeah, I know. Um, because these fields are so specialized nowadays. Unless you are doing unless you are studying an interdisciplinary field, you're probably not. They're not going to overlap. So, like I said, if you're doing if you're studying criminology and stuff like that, or you're studying certain aspects of social behavior, like um, like social constructivism theory and stuff like that, you're probably not going into the philosophy side. They don't really overlap at all. Not that they wouldn't have certain things to share in common, but two different two different departments. So um, when you go to college, like a lot of there's a lot of bureaucracy. That's sort of what separates philosophy from science in the first place. There's a lot of bureaucracy because again, a lot of people in analytic philosophy consider the sciences continuous with philosophy. Ever since people like Quine and others came about and said that philosophical analysis should basically be supplanted by scientific research. So, um, by the way, not everyone bought that from Quine. They did. A lot of us did agree with him with that naturalized epistemology should inform our views on theories of knowledge and rationality, but not everyone was convinced that we should just chuck away philosophy and just do science instead. Not a lot of people weren't convinced. Wittgenstein sort of made that argument too, but in a different way. And again, although a lot of people did take Wittgenstein to be like a god at one point, he later changed his tune on a lot of things. But that's again a topic for a whole other live stream. See what time I'm here. 122. So I'm about to go probably in like 10 minutes. But yeah, looking at looking at what you were saying, Howard. So I might do a day where we just not do where I won't call it philosophy, but maybe I do a day where we talk about current social, I don't know, current social trends or something like that. How says they got a rack man, been good, enjoy conversing night now. All right, no problem. Yeah, I'm about to go myself. But yeah, maybe I can do a topic on just like like certain social movements and stuff like that. But it won't be philosophy. I would say I know Monday I plan on talking about like Martin Luther King Day. I'm basically gonna say why both political sides are wrong when they talk about Martin, because both of them act like they own Martin's views, King's views, and both of them get him wrong. So that's something I'm gonna talk about Monday. But all right, guys, I'm gonna go. Unless anyone has any other questions or comments for me, I'm gonna eat a go eat a Fuji apple because I love those apples. Go eat one of my Fuji apples I bought and um, call it a night. All right, brother. Take care, man. But yeah, so like I said, we might do a topic on like social on like current social trends or social movements. Maybe we can talk about the whole idea of wokeism and stuff like that, and what that even means. um, but yeah, but for the most part, I'm gonna try to address like some really like nerdy academic stuff. Because like I said, when I talk about philosophy, I mean philosophy in the most pedantic meaning of it, the kind where you have like a professor actually hold these discussions with the class on very nerdy topics. And of course, my favorite topic in philosophy is the mind, of course, which is why I triple majored in psychology and linguistics, and then went on to do my grad in psychology. But anyway, guys, that's it for me. Everyone, take care. Like I said, unless anyone has any questions before I go, other than that, I'm gonna jet. I'm guessing since Howard's the only one here, there's gonna be no one to uh, ask a question. But if you watch this on replay, you can leave me a question in the comments, and I'll get to those questions in the comments as well. And if you want to support your boy, hey, leave me a super thanks. Always appreciate it. Um, Even if you can't leave a super thanks, um, like, share, and subscribe. That helps a lot. Uh, or if you want to become a member of the channel, you can. Very cheap, less than the cost of a Happy Meal. Yeah, I always say that. Um, and you can buy me a coffee at buymeacoffee.com. Okay. All those links are in the description. So appreciate it, guys. I'm out. Take care.